It is not all that unusual for children to go to school to be taught in languages other than their mother tongue. But it is unusual for kids from two very separate ethnic and religious communities to be taught in their two languages simultaneously, and it is almost unheard of to do so in a country where those communities have been in conflict for generations. The country in question is Israel, and the school that does just that is called Hand in Hand. Two of its directors are here with us today. Mohamad Marzouk, co-founder and director of the Community Department at Hand in Hand, and Rebecca Bardach, who is Director of Resource Development and Strategy at Hand in Hand. Well, this is fascinating. Welcome to both of you. Nice to have you here in the province of Ontario.
Thank you very much.
Let's just start by bringing our audience up to date with what you two are all about, okay? Sheldon, if you would, let's roll the video.
In 2002, the Hand in Hand bilingual schools in Jerusalem and the Galilee were still in their beginning stage. Small and intimate places with only a kindergarten, first and second grade. A group of Arab and Jewish parents had started the school just a few years before. Together, with the committed staff, they were experimenting with the innovative idea of enabling an encounter of cultures in an atmosphere of coexistence and equality instead of conflict. The school program, where Arabic and Hebrew are taught simultaneously in bilingual classes, was a pioneering educational project.
سيري نلخا يم 10 شكليم لاني الخا لا سوبر نخون دفعت له 10 عشان انا بدي اشتري الملبس اللي حقه ثلاث شواقل شو بسوي لي انا قلت انه ده كمان نشقاو يا سيدي.
Okay, so much we need to understand about how this all came together. Let's just, Rebecca, start with this. Are the teachers in the schools fluently bilingual?
Most of the teachers are. In general, Jews in Israel will know Hebrew, and Arabs will know both Hebrew and Arabic as the minority. So we have a two-teacher model to ensure that all the classes are bilingual, and you'll have, for all the younger grades, a Hebrew-speaking and Arabic-speaking Jewish and Arab co-teacher model working together all the time in order to teach.
I get that, but I mean, the teacher that speaks Hebrew, does that teacher also speak Arabic? And the teacher that speaks Arabic, can that teacher also speak Hebrew?
So the Hebrew-speaking teacher will often be learning Arabic. Okay. And the Arabic-speaking teacher will often be also fluent in Hebrew.
Okay. And Mohamad, are the classes 50-50 in terms of the student composition?
Yeah, mostly we're 50-50. That's something that we care of, to have an equal numbers in the classrooms and in the whole school in general. That's why also we have a Hebrew teacher and an Arabic teacher. So we try also to create something equal for both sides.
Okay, and Rebecca, when the student is called on by a teacher to answer a question, how does the student know what language to answer in?
We don't compel the kids to speak in one language or the other, so they can speak in the language of their choice. And so that allows people to be expressing themselves, because it's not just about language, it's also about culture and other aspects of communication.
Mohamad, do you know any other schools in the world where this kind of thing is happening?
Well, we know that in different places in the world, like in Canada, for example, there are bilingualism in a way that students are taught to speak two languages.
But English and French have not been at each other's throats in this country for 250 years, so that's a big difference.
That's right, that's right. And that's why we also give other meanings for the issue of language. It's not only language in a way that you being taught to speak, it's also culture, it's also identity, and also other things that come with. And that's why in Hand, the model is based on also issues of quality, how things can come equal in terms of language, learning both languages, but also culture and religious issues.
Okay, let me follow up on the academics here. Rebecca, is there anything especially extra complicated about trying to teach, for example, math or science in two different languages simultaneously?
So those will often be done, maybe you'll have one teacher teaching in one language or one teacher in the other. Or let's say with math, where it's important that kids are going to be getting in their mother tongue, because people tend to go to their root language for math. So maybe the teacher will be working then in both languages. On the one hand, it's complicated. On the other hand, it's like anything. Once you get used to the technique and the methodology, then people flow easily between the two languages.
Now, of course, there's a lot of education that happens in the classroom, and there may be even more that happens at recess time. So I want to ask you about recess.
Yeah.
My assumption is that the kids at recess go into their respective cultural units and speak their mother tongues. Is that what happens?
Kids are kids. So these are the kids who want to go play soccer. These are the kids who are going to go play on the jungle gym. These are the kids who are going to go play dolls together. And they're grouping much more around their common areas of interest, and that's what you're seeing more on the playground than otherwise.
Mohamad, can I get you on that? Do the Jewish kids only play with the Jewish kids and speak Hebrew, and then the Arabic kids with themselves and speaking Arabic?
Well, I would say that when they're with their own group, then they probably, and very natural that they speak their own language. But also, as Rebecca said, we're talking about kids. I think that the opportunities that they are separate, that when they're young, the situations of boys and girls. So you could see Arab and Jewish girls with Arab and Arab and Jewish boys, those playing soccer, others playing whatever. This is the more that we face and see. And not only necessarily the issue of Arabs and Jews. After all, it's us that we examine them in those categories. For them, they want to play.
This sounds so fascinating, and it also sounds so impossible. So let's try and explore that a little bit. How did this idea even come about in the first place?
Yeah. So the school system in Israel is basically tracked by language: Hebrew language, religious and secular, and Arabic language, which really reflects the communities and their preferences. But ultimately, it also is perpetuating the differences, and there's no common ground where people are building together through schools as they become citizens. 20 years ago, a bunch of parents said, we don't want that. We want our kids to grow up together. We want them to understand each other's languages and cultures and traditions and histories. And only in this way can we discover and create our common ground to create a common framework. So a group of first graders in Jerusalem and a group of first graders in the Galilee started and grew, second grade, third grade. Now the Jerusalem school is a K through 12. The school in the Galilee is a full school. And we now have 4 other schools as well. So we're a total of 6 schools and growing.
Mohamad, almost all of what we hear about Israel on the news is bad news. And I even wonder how you began to find even a few parents who thought, this is an interesting idea and we want our children to do this. How did you do that?
Well, unfortunately, the news that you hear is, the bad news that press, media are interested in, but many other good things happens there. I think the fact that the whole political situation is stuck bring people to think, what can we do? And that's actually what we encourage in hand our parents and other citizens to take action, to take responsibility in doing something to change our situation. I think that local action can be also influential and effective in creating another reality, and that's actually what we are doing. We're establishing an infrastructure, social infrastructure for Arabs and Jews for a shared and equal living together, no matter what will be the next years on the national political level or in the issue of the whole issue of the conflict. We as citizens believe that we can be effective, we can affect our situation, and that's what we are doing actually through bilingual schools that we establish for our children, but also shared communities for adults, Arabs and Jews, that can be active through this.
I can imagine that this would be extremely threatening to those who prefer the status quo. I can imagine that the government of Israel might not be keen on this. I can imagine that the surrounding Arab countries might not be keen on this. How supportive, let me start, Rebecca, with you, is the government of Israel to these efforts?
First and foremost, these are government schools. So each school is recognized, or the newer ones, we're still working on it, but they're situated in the public school system there. We have to add to it with parents fees and philanthropy to make this bilingual multicultural model work. But in that respect, we have government support and work closely with our local educational authorities so they really understand what's the model about, how it works, and what we're creating every single day there.
And Mohamad, how about you?
Well, I think that not everyone choosing the education and the way of creating relationships between Arab communities and Jewish communities. In that sense, the reason that we have this tough conflict comes from such a thing. But we believe differently. We believe that there are enough people that believe in this, want this, and believe that this is the future of the country that we should be active to go to, that makes hand in hand a movement, actually.
How much does it cost to go?
We're now, as Rebecca said, 6 schools, and we're expanding. Actually, we're thinking in opening a new community and a new school. And I think we're going to 15, 20 schools that will be very effective in the reality of Israel.
Okay, but I appreciate that the government of Israel supports the schools, but you indicated there's still funds that are required.
Exactly.
So how much does it cost to go?
So the a parent's fee is about 5,000 shekels, which is I think around $1,200 US. I'm not sure what that is in Canadian.
Okay.
And then in addition, it's approximately 2,500 in philanthropy per student to do all the additional stuff that we're doing.
Okay, let me. You probably know about this Hebrew University study from a few years ago that concluded that students from bilingual schools were better spoken, more accepting of other cultures, significantly less politically radicalized than their peers in unilingual schools. So if that's the case, which is a pretty good case for these schools, you'd have to say, how come you've got 6 schools instead of 60 schools or 600 schools?
If you were to approach an average Israeli and say that universities should be separate, they'd be shocked, because universities are completely integrated. If you say to them public schools should be integrated as opposed to on these tracks, it's equally radical because it's just not what's done. So in many ways, we're not only challenging the bureaucratic institutions, but the way that people think that society should be naturally divided. It doesn't have to naturally be divided. And as many people are seeing, it's actually, in some ways, the root source of a lot of the ongoing tensions afterwards. And so we're trying to build more and more support for it, and we're getting a lot more support. We have huge demand, far more demand than we can keep up with right now. We've got hundreds on waiting lists. We're working very hard to find ways to let as many of them in as possible, not only because for those people it's a pathway to the kind of life and society they want to be living in, but also because we really see it as part of this trajectory forward of making something that's available as a real option for Israeli society.
You're from California originally, but where do you live now?
I live in Jerusalem.
You live in Jerusalem. You got kids?
3. They're all at the school.
And they all go to the school?
Yeah. Yeah.
How about you?
I have also 3 kids. 2 of them are all graduated the school, and the third one is in 3rd grade right now in a hand-in-hand school.
Do you think that as a result of their educational practice, this different way of doing things, that they are more optimistic about the future of their country than, say, the rest of the population?
I think they're more they're more optimistic. They're more understandable of the complexity of the situation. I think that they deal with the environment in a very complex way that they got from being students of hand in hand. I think the way that they approach multicultural situation, whether it's in their school or in the village or any else, comes from the skills that they got from being educated in a multicultural school. After all, it's not only Arab and Jewish, it's also boys and girls, it's also different religions, it's different traditions, it's the way that they are educated to cope with problems, with disputes, how they solve problems with their friends. All this, when they grew up with those skills, with those messages of dealing with problems peacefully, actually, this is something that they stay with them when they go to the university. I believe the same thing when they make families. And that's actually the thing that we want our children and to the future of them.
Well, let me tweak the question a bit for Rebecca then. Your kids are growing up in a system where they're not taught to hate Arabs, or they don't hate Arabs, or their friends are Arabs. And therefore, they don't have the same kind of upbringing as, say, kids who go to a unilingual school who may not have that as a part of their upbringing. How does that make them different?
I think first and foremost, these kids are coming out with a couple of things. They always see the path to action. They always see what can be done, and they feel like it's doable. And they've got critical thinking skills because we're always looking and comparing and contrasting and understanding and arguing, but it also is rooted in a place of empathy. Those are powerful skills that they're bringing out in their very being, be it on the playground, be it on their afternoon activities. Even at ages 6 and 7, you can see it playing out. And certainly as these kids are becoming alumni and growing up, and it affects the parents too. Every parent is profoundly transformed on an ongoing basis by being a part of this, because you're constantly meeting and discussing and analyzing and celebrating and debating, and so you're always evolving and taking that out to your environment as well.
I should just clarify, I don't mean to suggest that the Israeli school system trains kids to hate Arabs, but the reality is, you know, these two peoples have been at each other's throats for quite some time, politically speaking, and therefore what you're doing is so interesting. You, okay, a couple of years ago, one of your schools was firebombed. Yeah. Here's reality. Descending on your school. What happened?
Well, actually, 2 or 3 guys burned a classroom in our Jerusalem school. Something that came from opposition, actually, of our way, that we don't want you here in Jerusalem.
Do they know who did it?
Yeah, they already know. They were in court and got punished.
You know I'm going to ask, were they Jews or Arabs?
Well, they were Jews in this case. Yeah.
Who find this threatening?
Who find this threatening? Who find this our schools like making assimilation between the two communities, something that they oppose. Which, by the way, I would say that what happens in the bilingual education is that every side get aware to his identity, to his cultural background, and to his belief from the meeting with the other. Because when you meet a different person, actually you ask question about yourself and who you are. So this is the main thing of the bilingualism. But anyway, those people, unfortunately took things
too far. Rebecca, what happened to them?
So they've been tried and convicted, but I think what's most important is what happened to us. And at first people were appalled and shocked and horrified and scared. And then we realized, okay, this was a nighttime that had happened, and we thought, you know, as horrified as we are, tomorrow morning 620 kids are coming to school, and their parents and their teachers, and we have to be ready. And with that, not only did we really focus on what do we do in this situation, but over the course of the next day, 2 days, 3 days, hundreds and thousands of people came out and supported us in all sorts of ways. Right-wing, left-wing, religious, secular, Jewish, Arab, governmental, citizens off the streets.
Let me pick up on governmental.
Yeah.
You've got some friends in high places. Sheldon, roll a clip.
For more than a decade, it's brought Jewish and Arab children together. Just 2 weeks ago, their school's first-grade classroom was set on fire by arsonists. In the weeks that followed, they and their classmates could have succumbed to anger or cynicism, but instead they built this menorah, one of 4 that we brought here from Israel this year. Each of his branches are dedicated to one of the values their school is founded on, values like community and dignity and equality and peace.
That sometimes, you know, an attack has occurred horribly against the school and I guess against the values that you're preaching, above all, more than against the building. Or, you know, makes people think, you know, what are my values and what do I believe in? How do I want to affirm what I believe in and what I do? So it doesn't surprise me at all that your parents are, the more they hear about you, you know, it's a perverse, not what the people who attacked your school intended, but they've had the effect of publicizing this amazing model.
Well, that's what I want to follow up on. You've got the American president, you've got the UN ambassador from the United States basically going to bat for you. Ironically, did this help?
Everything helps.
Even firebombing?
Not firebombing.
Well, that's what I meant. The firebombing gave you attention you might otherwise not have had.
Look, you have to deal with the reality you have. I don't think anybody would wish the firebombing again. But the fact that it did open up so many people's attention to what we're doing, and that people have come from so many places to say, we want to be a part of helping you, is critical, because at the end of the day, as hard as we're working and as much as we're succeeding, we also can't do it alone. And so in that respect, I would say it really opened up to a lot more people saying, we need to stand with you, and that's been huge.
Mohamad, I am utterly fascinated at how you teach in this school the events of 1948, which for Jews in Israel was independence, was a miracle, was a recoming together of a Jewish population in the Middle East thousands of years after the fact, and which Arab residents call the Nakba, right? The catastrophe.
Yes.
How do you teach that in your school?
Well, you're touching the most complicated and sensitive issue of the whole year of Hand in Hand in the schools. Because on one hand, one of the reasons that we created the schools and the communities is to deal with such a contradictory issues that the Arabs narrative and the Jewish narrative are, I would say, in contradiction. In the way that we explain what happened and the way that we tell our children what happened and teach history are very contradictory. Our approach is that we give a place and legitimacy for both sides to tell their stories and to have to be with themselves as ones who passed those historical events for the Jewish side, the establishment and the creation of the state. For the Arab side is losing actually homeland. So we believe that in being together, because that we are now not in a situation to create kind of other reality that can be agreed for the both sides. So we start from giving legitimacy for the whole side.
Well,
for the Arab children, it's an opportunity to know what happened for the people, for their people, and for the Jewish students. Yeah, it's the way that they celebrate their independence. It's not easy.
No, I know it. Well, let me.
It's not easy.
Let me follow up with Rebecca on this because, first of all, both sides don't agree on what the facts were. That's number one. One side says we're right, you're wrong. The other side says we're right, you're wrong. How do you possibly find a shared experience in the events of 1948 for these two different groups of people?
I would say one of our starting points is what was the actual lived personal experience for both sides. Whatever happened at the macro political level is one thing, and everyone's got their perspectives, and there's legitimacy to both, to a lot of different angles there. But first and foremost is a question of what you personally experienced, what your family experienced, the real pain and suffering. And in that, I think there's a lot of common ground to be found. And so the first question is, how do we understand what people have experienced? And then, based on that, how do we say, okay, with these different interpretations, and maybe we'll argue about it. We also argue. It's not all peace and roses and everyone comes to agreement. But we allow for the argument, and we do it in a way that's constructive, because at the end of the day, we're all committed to making it work out. And I think really that's the guiding principle for everybody.
It would be impossible in the year 2016 for anybody to become Prime Minister of Canada if they did not speak English and French well. It's just not on. That's our political reality. It's not the case in Israel, is it? I mean, you can easily be elected if you don't speak a word of Arabic. I presume that's right, right?
Correct, yeah. It's an official state language. Arabic and Hebrew are both official state languages, but it's not mandated the way it is in Canada.
Would you prefer a day where that were the case, where a future Israeli Prime Minister was bilingual perfectly in both those languages?
I think it's the perfect way to mutual understanding across the board for everybody.
Mohamad, how about you on that?
Well, I think the issues are not the language. It's different. The Israeli context, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, even within Israel, is completely different than in Canada. And although there's some issues might be in common, but anyway, the mission, the political game, and the problems that politics deal with in Israel are different in Canada than in Canada. In that sense, the fact or the reason that Israeli person can be elected as a prime minister without knowing Arabic. It comes from a different reasons. It's an issue of majority and minority. It's an issue of how politics deal with the daily life problems, and we're not in that place right now, like in Canada. But I think through hand in hand, maybe we're going to be in this way.
Well, let's finish on that. I've got less than a minute left here, Rebecca, to ask you. Let's imagine a future where lots of kids go through this kind of educational process. We've had dozens of guests on this program over the years who insist there is no hope for peace in this country for decades. Never mind now, decades. Does your school system point to a potentially different future?
When we decide that there's no way to create peace, we're basically condemning ourselves to a destiny of endless conflict. And we're not willing to do that. Not for ourselves, not for our children, not for our grandchildren, not for your children or grandchildren either. So we really see this is the only, this and this type of thing working together is really the only way forward. You have to take every opportunity you have and use it and maximize it and expand it. It might take decades. It might take, you know, the story with our grandparents and so forth, but we're all working with all these generations together to try to make this a viable choice for all of us on a much broader basis as soon as we can.
I thank both of you for coming in and sharing your views on this. Let me try a couple of words of my worst Arabic and Hebrew here by saying Salam Alaikum, Shalom Aleichem, Rebecca Bardach, Mohamad Marzouk. Hand in hand. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.